On this week's episode of You Asked, why do TV speakers suck? In fact, why even bother putting speakers in some TVs? Why don't TVs get 5 HDMI ports instead of 3 or 4? And is Panasonic going to abandon the US again? And should you even buy one of their TVs now? Welcome back, everyone. I'm Caleb Dennison, and this is You Asked, the show in which I answer questions you asked in hopes that I can help you and others with similar tech questions. If you've got a question you need answered, please email it to youasked@digitaltrends.com and tune in Sundays at 7:45 a.m. Pacific time to see if your question gets picked to be answered on the show. Let's start with Mike, who writes, why on earth in 2025 do TVs still insist on wasting space with built-in inadequate speakers? I can understand lower budget or entry-level TVs, but if people are spending $2,000 plus, doesn't it make sense they're probably using an AVR or soundbar? I'd think the added real estate and the cost savings would entice the TV makers to drop the speakers in their higher-end TVs. Plus, they could push their own brand of crappy soundbars. Thanks. Okay, first off, crappy soundbars is kind of harsh. They aren't all crappy, but that aside, I understand what you're getting at. To address this whole speaker in TVs issue, I actually want to start by talking about TV tuners. Stick with me now. Did you know that in 2016 and 2017, TV brand Vizio removed over-the-air tuners from its M-Series and P-Series TVs? Except they weren't allowed to call them TVs. See, in the United States, the FCC, or Federal Communications Commission, requires the display to have an over-the-air tuner in order for the devices to be called a television. So Vizio had to market these things as monitors or home theater displays. Now, I like to imagine that Vizio thought at the time, look, everything is going to streaming now, and we imagine many, if not most of our customers, will never use a tuner, and besides, there's a lot of live TV that you can stream as well. Pretty soon, folks won't even need an antenna, so why not stand out by going a new direction and just omit the tuner? Now, if this was indeed Vizio's thinking at the time, as I recall it to be from the discussions I had with them back then, I could be mistaken, but if that were the case, it kind of seems like an Apple move, right? I mean, Apple was all, we're removing the headphone jack from our phones because who uses wired headphones anymore? Everything's going wireless. We have to be bold. We have to have the courage to do this, as Apple said. Except Vizio wasn't Apple, not even close. And the consumer reaction to the tuner being removed was not warmly received. And that is an understatement. Vizio ended up walking back that decision by 2018, but some could argue that was the beginning of Vizio's decline from a once very strong market position. I guess the lesson there is don't make Apple moves unless you have Apple money and Apple power. But really, I bring that story up because there are many of us who can't imagine having a high performance, even high-end, expensive TV and not having a similarly premium audio system to go with it. And so we see the speakers built into the TV as completely unnecessary. But I need to remind you all again that folks who feel that way, well, we're very much in the minority. See, even though it may sometimes seem like they don't, TV manufacturers actually do pay attention to feedback from their customers, especially when that feedback indicates that a decision they made resulted in lost revenue. And I have to believe they know that if they did not include speakers in their TV, the backlash would be uproarious. Nobody could afford that kind of negative PR. And I'm pretty sure everybody in the TV business is often reminded of that Vizio situation as an example of what not to do. Beyond that, I don't see that there's a whole lot to be gained by not putting speakers in the TV. It's not gonna lower costs significantly. It's not gonna make the TV noticeably slimmer. There's really just no upside. Omitting speakers is a high-risk gamble that will not pay meaningful dividends. That means don't do it. Now, if any of these TV brands had the same amount of market-shifting power and control as Apple, I suppose they could make the bold move to force people to get supplemental audio systems. Maybe even call that courage. But they don't have that kind of power. It's the kind of move that could sink a brand, so I don't see it happening anytime soon. Okay, but with all of that said and understood, why do TV speakers tend to suck? Well, just because the TV manufacturer has to put speakers in a TV doesn't mean that that manufacturer is highly motivated to make them great. They need to be just good enough not to piss somebody off. There's a big difference between not having something at all and having something that you find disappointing but admittedly ancillary or supportive to the primary function of the device. In this case, that would be the picture. Also, consumer obsession over increasingly thin TVs over the past few years has forced manufacturers to come up with audio solutions that fit in very little space. Transducers, or speakers if you prefer, by their very nature, want some space to sound good. It also helps if they're firing at your ears as opposed to down at the floor. But as manufacturers put weaker and weaker audio systems in their TVs, and those TVs still sold well, they learned that customers would accept paltry audio systems if the TV on the whole was good enough. Now, there are some exceptions to this rule. We've seen some extremely high-end TVs from Hisense, TCL, Sony, and Panasonic include premium audio systems. Sometimes that effort works well, and sometimes it just really doesn't. The thing is, when the audio system is done really well, it does add some cost and complexity to the TV. And in some cases, it can even be a bit of a gamble. I'm thinking specifically of the Panasonic Z95A, which basically has a built-in soundbar strip at the bottom of the TV. Yes, it sounds great, but I've seen folks commenting that they don't love that look. And that reminds me of when Sony built speaker strips onto the left and right side of some of its TV models back in the day. Sounded pretty good, but folks did not like the look at all, and Sony swiftly discontinued that practice. So you can see that there isn't a whole lot of motivation to outfit a television with a premium audio solution, but there's a lot of risk involved in not including one at all. Kind of makes sense that they would take a good enough approach and leave it at that. Dionicio, sorry if I butchered your name, writes, with the high amount of devices we're able to connect to our TVs, is there any reason why TV manufacturers do not simply add a fifth HDMI port? Thanks. That's actually a really interesting question. I think as part of answering this question, I need to once again remind folks that as enthusiasts, we may see one of our personal needs or wants as similar to the greater public, but that's just not the case. Anecdotally, I can tell you that a lot of folks don't connect anything to their TVs at all. Maybe a soundbar, and that's it. The surge in streaming popularity and the convenience of built-in streaming platforms makes it very easy to buy a TV and never need to use another device. By the numbers, I can tell you that cable and satellite subscribers are dwindling at a faster rate than ever, so those cable and satellite boxes are taking up fewer HDMI ports on TVs than ever before. And again, by the numbers, we know that disc players and disc sales are on a steep decline, much to my chagrin. Now, admittedly, game consoles are super popular, but most households have just one console, not 2, 3, or even 4. And when you combine that single HDMI port need with the decreasing need for more, what we see is that a huge chunk of the public doesn't even use the 3 or 4 HDMI ports they've got. The same reality is also why we don't see more TVs from brands like Sony, Panasonic, TCL, and Hisense, including 4 HDMI 2.1 ports. The need isn't there at a high enough scale for companies like MediaTek, which makes the SoCs, or system on chip, that brands like those I just mentioned use in their TVs. So from a business decision-making perspective, I think we're more likely to see 4 HDMI 2.1 ports from MediaTek before we see 5 HDMI ports. Also, a complete redesign of the existing boards will have to be made to accommodate the space, and that one decision is going to set off a flurry of TV redesigns. Admittedly, it's a relatively small change, but even small changes at scale take a lot of work. Look, many of you who watch this show and watch this channel are part of a special community, and within the vacuum of this community, for which I am extremely grateful, by the way, It's easy to feel like everyone else feels like us and has the same needs and wants as us. Unfortunately, we are enthusiasts. In the same way that most folks don't need or even want a desktop PC, let alone one with a $2,000 graphics card, most folks don't need 5 HDMI ports. So we're forced to use AV receivers or external HDMI switchers so that we can fill our niche need. And you know what? I kind of like that. I know it costs a bit of money, but that's what this hobby requires sometimes. Patrick writes, so I'm still really considering the Z95B. Is that stupid? Does this news necessarily make this one to avoid? Fire TV updates would come from Amazon, right? P.S. Apple TV user here anyway. Right, so to clarify that question, and as I imagine many TV enthusiasts already know, there is some worry that Panasonic could end up selling off its TV division in about a year or so. This worry comes from the fact that Panasonic Holdings Company president Yuki Kusumi made that statement during an online press conference on February 4th. So naturally, with the future of Panasonic's TV business in question, some are questioning whether it's smart to buy a Panasonic TV. My answer is yes, I think it is safe to buy a Panasonic TV. And I have two reasons I feel comfortable saying that. One is practically and analytically based. The other is, well, it's a little more personal and optimistic, honestly. And it's weird that I feel like I have to do this, but I want to make it clear that I do not have a crystal ball. So please don't come at me if you buy a Panasonic TV and then Panasonic exits the US market in a year. I mean, I don't think that's going to be a problem anyway, but just don't come at me, please. Interestingly, it's that lack of crystal ball that's at the heart of my next point. None of us have one. Not only that, but we don't have adequate insight into what's actually motivating that statement. It's possible that Mr. Kusumi said that because he needs it known that he is a smart, practical businessman and he is looking at all options that would help ensure the long-term health of all of Panasonic's business holdings, which, by the way, are vast. Simply acknowledging that something is under consideration can give shareholders enough confidence to prevent them from bailing out, further threatening the company's financial viability. But guys, there's no guarantee that a sale is likely, much less inevitable. I don't think we have enough information to read this as Panasonic TV is on the ropes. At least I hope not. I do think that Panasonic's re-entry into the US market is a sign that Panasonic believes that if it's successful at regaining part of the US TV market share, that's going to strengthen its TV division overall. Given how much work they had to do to re-enter the US market in the first place, I take it as a sign that there's more optimism around their TV business than pessimism right now. I reckon one really great way of trying to help ensure that Panasonic's TVs continue being true Panasonic TVs and not just another brand licensed out to some other manufacturer is to buy Panasonic TVs. And they are excellent TVs. Now, the reason I think it's safe to purchase one is that even if Panasonic does sell off its TV division, and envisioning a worst case scenario, stop sending out firmware updates to the TVs are good enough that they're not gonna need a ton of firmware updates in the first place. And any updates to streaming apps will be on the Amazon side. So the TV should be viable for many years. I mean, if we still have diehard fans of Pioneer Kuro and Panasonic Plasmas out here rocking their TVs quite happily, I think that a Panasonic TV purchase today is gonna hold up well. At least as well, if not better, than most TVs produced today. Yes, the replacement cycle of TVs now is much shorter than it used to be. But relative to that replacement cycle, I think a Panasonic TV purchase now is as safe as it gets. And on a personal note, I do hope that Panasonic's TV business can stay healthy and see consistent growth in the US market. Competition in this space is a good thing for consumers. On a more practical note, I don't think we have enough information to be forecasting doom and gloom for Panasonic TVs. Not yet. I think what we're seeing out there right now are the kind of headlines that get clicks. And there's some merit to the concern, but I think it's far too early to be forecasting demise. Now, I admit that statement may not age well. I could be wrong, but right now, the way things are going in this world, I'm choosing optimism and hard work over pessimism and surrender. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Don't forget to join us right here Sundays at 7:45 a.m. Pacific time. Like, comment, subscribe, send in those questions. I'll see you on the next one. And until then, here's 2 other videos I think you might like. I can tell that face is ugly.